You're a monster.
I'm your number one fan.
Now clear your minds. Knows what scares you. It has from the very beginning.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Just been informed that zombies have entered the building. They're at the door. They're coming in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Midnight Monster Corner podcast. I'm your host, as always, Corey, and alongside me is my good pal, Daniel. What's going on, Daniel?
No.
And alongside him is our good pal, Tony. What's going on, Tony?
Not much, man. What's going on, fellas?
Not much. So how you guys been?
Oh, been pretty busy, man. Been pretty
Yeah.
busy. Been pretty busy. Trying to get movie watches in whenever I can, but it's been so chaotic lately.
Yeah, I've been doing well. We've been doing a lot of moving around the house, basically converting our upstairs to our downstairs and our downstairs to our upstairs. So our den is officially downstairs in the basement room, which is the biggest room in the house. So now we actually have a full-fledged den / movie mausoleum. I will be building my movie shelf soon. I almost have my wife convinced to just turn it into just a man cave. You know, we can call it a den, family room, whatever. But ultimately, it'll just be a giant man cave, so I can hang up all my nerd posters and stuff. Hang up my big, yeah, hang up my aliens poster next to the family photo. You know.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Well, Corey actually helped me build my shelf, so that's the guy you need. Yeah, that's the guy you need to go to.
Yeah, yeah. But the only rule though, per my wife, is she doesn't want it to be mounted to the wall. So I'm gonna have to find some kind of way to build just or rather, she doesn't want it to be like free floating, I guess, like anchored to the wall. So I'm gonna have to find a way to build like an actual shelf that could be moved. But I still kind of want to mount it so it's like stable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know the ones that you used to get from like Kmart and stuff like that. Those like media shelf. They used to be really flimsy.
They still are.
Yeah, they still are. I got a couple of them. I don't know how they've held up over as long as they've held up, but they have. But usually I had with them.
Yeah, I had one of those shells I bought. I spent like $35. That's with tax. I put it together. I put it in my man cave in my old house. I never moved it. It was in one spot the whole time. I moved once, put it in the back of my my SUV. I get to where I'm about to unload it, and as I'm pulling it out, it just snaps in half.
Oh,
So bye shelf. And that was
Wow.
that. That's how cheap them things are.
Mm-hmm.
particle board.
You're better off just going like Home Depot or Lowe's and just picking up the stuff yourself and building it.
Exactly. So that's what I'll be doing in the near future.
Right on.
After a long, tiring week, we had Easter with the family. We left for Charleston. And we just got back about an hour ago in time to record. So on the road, yeah, I rented a movie on Vudu that I already owned.
Wow.
Just so I could watch to come back and do this review. So
He's dedicated to his craft.
Well, here's a swift kick for you. I did my homework, and they've got the full movie on YouTube.
oh my gosh.
And it's good quality.
Oh my gosh. You tell me this now?
I just found out about it.
Well, I rented on. I went and spent the extra $1 to get the HD version on Vudu. It was good quality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I am not the biggest fan of watching movies on my phone, but you know, it was. I actually started watching it this morning. I woke up about 6:30 because my wife had to get up early anyway to go to her procedure or her appointment rather. And I was sitting in a dark hotel room while they were sleeping watching Changeling.
It's actually a perfect way to watch it too. In the dark.
It was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Sucked into the atmosphere of the movie.
Yeah. So, yep, we are doing a review on The Changeling,
Mm-hmm.
1980s or 1980 film starring George C. Scott. I think Corey was actually the one that recommended this movie too because I think we were out hunting. Was it you, Tony? I think it was Corey. We were out hunting at Scratch and Spin. I pulled it off the shelf or you found it and recommended it, and I bought it. But
I don't
either
know.
way,
I
We're
vaguely
both
remember. Maybe I think actually, did I point that out to you?
I think you did.
might have been Corey. Yeah,
Oh, such a good movie.
yeah.
It is. It is really
It
good.
definitely would have been one that I recommended as well, though, because I mean, I've had a love of this movie for a very long time. So I
Mhm.
think it's really underrated. Unfortunately, not enough people talk about it.
Mhm.
Which hopefully, just us doing the show and just getting the word out there more, even our listeners will pick it
Yeah.
up, get interested in it, and want to actually see it because I mean, you get unfolded in the mystery, like it
Yeah.
just it encapsulates you, especially when it's the
It,
first time watch.
right. It does have a formula that you see a lot in a lot of haunting movies.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, the house is haunted. Why is it haunted? Why is the spirit so unrestly? It's like, oh, something tragic happened. What happened? Oh, we got to uncover the mystery. So it has a simple formula, but at the same time, it's, for its time, it was done really well. It's brilliantly shot,
Oh,
brilliantly acted. You know, I just one of the things that really stood out to me was the camera work, just how they put you in the atmosphere.
yeah,
It
they
was
do.
great.
They
But
do it quite well.
before we jump into this, we do have to remind you that whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, be sure to like, share, subscribe. We are getting a lot of traction on YouTube, and we appreciate that. We'd like to keep that up. So like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, leave a comment. You can follow us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever you can listen to podcasts. Leave us a review. That would help push the show. We greatly appreciate that. Follow us on TikTok at Midnight Monster 20 and follow us on Twitter at Monster_Corner, which I've actually been posting a lot on Twitter, trying to get those Twitter follows up. So if you prefer Twitter, that's cool too. We don't discriminate. So be sure you follow us there. And yeah, we also have a Facebook group, which we do a lot. There's a lot of activity in there. A lot of our main fans, go in there. Shout out to Joshua Adams, who actually made us a really cool cover photo.
Yeah,
So
Mhm.
if you see him in the group, hit him up. He does amazing work. If you're looking for some work to be done, or just give him a shout out, tell him how awesome the cover photo looks, because it looks pretty badass. Also, he's got a new podcast up. What's it called, Corey? The Fringe,
I think it's called Horror Fringe.
Horror Fringe.
Yeah, I believe so.
Don't want to butcher it. I'll probably look it up while we're in the middle of our discussion and see if I can give him a shout out at the end of the
We'll
show.
definitely have
So
to get more to him, or
yeah,
get more from him. That way we can put it out.
yeah, definitely. So he has a horror podcast as well. So we'll post we'll be posting it in the group so you guys can follow him there, check him out, give him a shout out, give him some love because he supports us and we want to support him. So
yeah, absolutely. It's called The Fringes.
the Fringes, okay, appreciate it. And
Got it.
yeah, so follow us on our Facebook group. It is a closed group. But ask nicely, and we'll let you in. At least I will. Corey might die and haunt your house. But
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah. With that being said, we are going to talk about the Changeling.
And we're
Yes.
probably more than likely going to get into spoilers really, really early. So for the listeners that haven't seen it, definitely check this movie out.
Apparently,
Before
it's
you
free
listen.
on YouTube.
So there's no reason for you not to check it out. It's on YouTube and it's amazing. So if you want to get encapsulated in a good ghost story, this is the film for you.
Alrighty. So, who wants to kick this off?
Well, I can.
Okay.
So before we get into this film fully, I just wanted to say, so we were in a discussion the other day after recording the other episode on Your Next, in which you, Daniel, you brought up that somebody contacted you via work and said that they wouldn't mind possibly being on the show to kind of give, I guess, give tale of their paranormal experiences or whatever.
Yes. So I have a gentleman at work. He's just a bit of acquaintance. We, just in passing by, small talk. And I told him about the podcast, and he checked it out. But he came to me and said that he had experienced some paranormal stuff, and he would like to share on the show one day. So if he's still interested, and he's not microphone shy, maybe he wouldn't mind coming on and sharing his story. But that got us talking and thinking. I think that's really what inspired us wanting to jump into paranormal movies. And I mean, maybe we can make April the paranormal month.
I'd be fine dedicating that.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm good with it too. Absolutely.
Cool. So, with that, we're jumping into The Changeling from 1980. And so this film follows a gentleman by the name of John who, in the beginning scenes of the film, he gets into he doesn't get into there's a bad car accident involving his child and his wife who are playing in the snow, and they instantly get killed. So now it's flopped to where he's going to a house. He's getting away. He's moving on with his life. So he's moving out of his apartment and into a house to where he can work again. And upon his arrival there, some things start happening in the house. Some strange occurrences. And for that time period, almost seems like no one wants to kind of believe him at first, and then people start catching on to what's going on, and it ends up turning into a big mystery that you pretty much go with John and solving. I'm gonna kind of just leave it there and go into the discussion now. First thoughts, guys.
First thoughts. This movie to me is a masterpiece. I mean, I don't want to jump into that yet, but to me, this is one of the best. It follows that line of these psychological, like paranormal, haunting, like ghost films that really set up big, and even in the '60s with like The Haunting and a movie like The Innocents and stuff like that. It really feels similar to that, just in and of its time. I know we're talking pregame that we were trying to debate like what time did it feel like this film was shot, and it really has that early, like super early, almost to where it feels like a '70s movie, '80s aesthetic to it. But it really, I mean, you can't say enough about George C. Scott in his brilliant acting. He's so natural when it comes to the humanity, and you can see because he's dealing with the loss of both his wife and his daughter in the beginning. Like, as soon as the opening titles start, I mean, it's that quick. So there's just moments where he's, you can tell he's still grieving, and there's one scene in particular where it's the only time you really see it too, where he's actually just crying.
yeah,
He's really like just breaking down, and it's like so sad, man, because he's so good at just feeling so normal, or so natural, and I think that was pretty interesting, and it really adds a lot to his character that you really only see that happen one time throughout the film, and he's dealing with grief in a way that only he can, and literally and figurative. I mean, he goes clear across the country. He relocates from New York to Seattle, which is where the film takes place. And I think it's said in dialogue in the film that it was a mistake that he was even rent or leased that house because he wasn't supposed to be. I think that's brought up, by the lady that runs I think it's called the Historical Society,
yeah.
that actually leases him the house for rent, and he finds out like he's not even supposed to be. It was a mistake that he was even in that house to begin with. because apparently this house had problems with families moving in and just not being able to live in this house. So,
I wonder why.
yeah, exactly. So, his character just it's you follow the story through his eyes, and everything happens through him. And when we get into kind of like when he's first contacted, or when he's first made aware of the spirit, um you could see how it kind of affects his character, and how he kind of is like almost like a surrogate through his, because he is dealing with the grief of his daughter passing. And I think he even says that in the movie, that maybe it's because his daughter died, he's able to be the surrogate and hear this, spirits, trying to reach out to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, like it follows a familiar format, or familiar formula, but in a, like kind of a, like in a pioneer way. Like it almost, when watching this movie, I was like, when did this movie come out? And I looked it up, 1980. I was like, okay, this can't be the first haunting movie, but it just feels like with this kind of movie, like that psychological mystery haunting, I just feel like it really set the precedent moving
Mhm.
forward, what those movies should entail, and like I said before we even jumped into the discussion, this movie was brilliantly shot. Like the camera work was just fantastic. The way they would, piece in little things as the camera was moving, and putting you in that atmosphere. Like little things, even like the scene where he's playing the piano and you see the door open behind him, like real
Yeah,
slow.
that was great.
And and then he walks to go, he thought he'd hear somebody, and he goes and checks it out. And then the landlord or whoever was maintaining the building walks in in the other door behind him,
Mhm.
So at this point, he doesn't really know the house is haunted, right? Um, and then, there's the scenes later where he starts hearing like the banging and stuff. And which was another scene. Now I'm not sure if we're jumping too far ahead here or not, but he kept hearing the banging noise,
Mm-hmm.
and then this scene where he's trying to knock the lock off the door, and he's doing it to the rhythm of the banging.
Yeah,
I thought that was a brilliant,
yeah,
brilliant scene,
Yeah.
because
it
he
really.
stopped. He stopped for a minute, and he was like, "Wait," because he's like,
Mm-hmm.
was I envisioning me doing that, or was I
Right,
hearing
and
things? It was
and that's
messing.
why it taps into the psychological aspect of it.
Right.
This movie is very psychological. It's not just a typical haunting film. It's very much psychological as well. And scenes like that heighten that to me. To your point,
Yeah.
I mean, it just heightens that moment for me. Even then, it seems like he's dealing with that, because it's a constant thing. That banging sound, he hears it. He's like, "Oh, is that the pipes? Is that, what is that? What's making that noise in the house? What's going on?" Even he gets that guy to check it out and see. The guy's like, "Hey, man, this is
Hmm.
an old house. It's going to make noises and this and that." But he's like, "No, this is a serious noise that's going on, and it's going on constantly." He said, "So I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it." But even then, when he's knocking the lock with that hammer, he stops for a minute and kind of clutches his head, and he's like, it's starting to break him down. Like it's starting to wear on
Yeah.
him at that point.
Well,
So,
Mhm.
and that just goes to show from George C. Scott, his brilliant acting. He purveys that without telling you.
Yeah.
well, if you listen to the dialogue at one point, he's talking to, I forget the main actress's name in the film.
It is Trish Van Devere.
Thank you.
Claire Norman was her name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Claire.
yeah, he was talking to her, and he was like, I can't do this all over again.
Yeah,
You know,
he mentions that.
so
Yeah, that's also his wife in real life too. Actually, now
yeah,
his widow. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I know.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
what a
Pretty.
little
stud.
trivia there.
Well, he
George
is.
C.
But
Scott was quite the ladies' man.
He was. I
you know,
mean,
He's like,
one of one of the things that I really loved about this is, you know, even like nowadays when people have like, you know, paranormal, happenings or whatever, and they have a hard time dealing with it because not too many people believe in that stuff. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm.
so either it's authentic or you're deemed crazy. You know, and especially in that time period, he didn't. You could kind of catch the little subtle hints that he didn't want to really at first tell anyone. I hear my piano banging all the time.
Or he didn't
I
want to
hear,
believe it.
yeah, he didn't, yeah, it's almost like he didn't want to believe it himself. Um, and even still, like he's been through a serious trauma, and that plays in the psychological things as well. Like,
Yeah.
is he imagining these things?
Right.
You know?
It's interesting that you bring that up because this movie, I was reading through some of the trivia, and this movie was actually based on I'm reading it straight off IMDb here, based on the events which supposedly took place at Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in Denver, Colorado, while writer Russell Hunter was living there during the 60s. The
Hmm.
Chessman Park neighborhood in the movie is a reference to the Chessman Park in Denver where the original haunting transpired, and the original house has since been demolished.
Oh, that's a shame.
How cool is that?
Well, that's another thing too. The house in this movie is almost a character in and of itself. It's got so
It
much.
really
It's got
is.
some. It really does. There's so many rooms and there's so many places to go in this house, dude.
Yeah.
It's almost like because I would when he first, which is brilliant, when the glass pane breaks
Oh
and
yeah.
it breaks outward toward him when he's outside, and then he notices the window and he's like, well, he's gonna follow it, and then well, there's a closet right here. Well, there's nothing here. Wait a minute. There's planks in the back, like they're boarding something up. So he
Hmm.
starts taking the shelves down and pulling the planks and stuff off, and he finds out that there's a room that's been like boarded up, so no one can find it. Um, it's like when he's going up there to that closet and stuff like that, you see all these different hallways and these rooms, and it's like how many rooms are in this house?
Mhm.
It's almost disorienting how many different rooms and hallways and just how much like square footage this house is. It's insane, but
Mhm.
it feels so much like a character itself. This house, it's a really cool looking house too. Really, really, really dope. I love the
Yeah.
look up. It feels like a typical haunted Victorian style house.
Which is funny because going back to trivia, this was not filmed in a house.
Hmm.
Apparently, they didn't have the budget to do it in a house, so the inside of the house was actually an intricately pieced together set in a studio.
Well, that set designer did a brilliant job, if that's the
Mhm.
case.
Yes, they did. That's
Well,
crazy.
you know what? And that kind of gave them the free reign of doing the stuff that they did. I mean, the chandelier falling, the set catching on fire.
Yeah, the
They wouldn't have
stairs.
been able to do that in a house anyways, especially an old house, like an old Victorian home or whatever. They wouldn't have been able to do that.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Unless it was condemned and doomed to be demolished anyway.
So they've done in previous, yeah, they've done that in films too. A house that's
but
set to be demolished, they've shot in it, and then the climax of the movie, they've destroyed it. So
mhm.
it's happened before. It's not a new thing, but yeah, that's crazy, dude. That set designer, wow, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And you just get lost in all the different corridors of the house and how expansive it is, and it's
Yeah.
I
It was
every time I
very
watch
elegant.
it, oh yeah, and it's very elegant as well.
Mhm.
Love the
Yeah.
way it's laid out, the floor plan and everything is just really cool. But it's funny when he first moves in, the first indication you notice of something that is, amiss or that there could be something haunting this house is when he is at the piano and then he gets up, the camera zooms into the piano and the piano key just boom, just plays.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
really cool. I love that. That's the first time you really notice that something's off. Like something's kind of happening here. I mean, you know what you're getting into with the story watching this movie, but still, it's like, oh shit. So this is
Yeah.
what's happening.
You know, that reminded me of a scene in the film Innkeepers.
Oh, that's another great film.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I strongly think that that's where it was taken from, almost, or at least inspired. Little paid homage there.
Could be. There's something haunting about pianos.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it. Well,
You
it
get
plays into it too because he is a music teacher. Like, so that kind of makes sense for the plot. Kind of
yeah,
makes sense to
yeah. Oh, totally.
reach out to him
Time I
using
think.
that object.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Every time I think of a haunting or a piano in a haunting movie, I always think of The Others.
Yeah, that too.
That was a cool movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, so
Same
can't give
here.
it like a definite review, but it was interesting. Definitely an interesting twist at the end there.
Mhm.
But so yeah, the atmosphere of this movie was
Mm.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And I keep going back to the camera work, but they do just such a good job of keeping you engrossed in the movie just through like the way the camera moves. And it really is like they don't cut to death. It's a lot of scenes are very smoothly shot. Hell, even scenes where like he's going to a restaurant to meet someone. It's just they do such a good job of you know um, really focusing in on George C. Scott's character
Mhm.
and how he's and everything he's going through in the movie and having to you know deal with this oppressive spirit that's basically tormenting him. Like I was telling my wife because she was interested in the movie. She didn't really get a chance to sit down and watch it with me, but she was asking questions, like uh, about like the she thought that like maybe the spirit of his daughter was haunting him, and I was like, no, it's not really that. It's more of the spirit kind of messing with him, you know,
Mhm.
um, being very mischievous, you know, because like the scene where the all the sinks were on, and he's having to go around and turn all the sinks off.
Yeah,
Yeah, which that was a cool scene
yeah.
when they saw the apparition in the bathtub. But
Oh,
it kind of makes you think of what like a little ghost child would do. And you hear that a lot in haunting stories. And you go back and watch a movie like this, like this movie has a lot of even for its time. I mean, this was 1980. I don't know when the Lorraine stories were coming out, but
like
I know like the the paranormal investigators that inspired
Oh
the
yeah,
Conjuring.
yeah.
yeah, Conjuring.
Ed and Lorraine Warren. That's their names. I'm not sure like when their stories were coming out, but I know like when this movie came out, like I read earlier, it's based on a true story, um, or an alleged true story, and it has a lot of the things you see in a lot of paranormal encounters. Doors opening and closing by themselves, um, hearing voices, objects moving by themselves. Then there are some like way overboard supernatural things, like when he took the ball and he went and tossed it off the
Oh,
bridge. Then he came
yes.
back and the ball was back. Like that
Oh
was
man,
that was a cool scene.
I want to talk about that scene in particular because you know how I am with my metaphors. So
Right.
that scene to me is a way, it's a metaphor where this ball now, for our listeners, this ball that he has belonged to his daughter. So, he brought it with him on the move. He didn't want to leave it behind. So he was still coming to terms with the grief and the tragedy of the loss of his daughter and his wife.
Right.
So he held that piece with him, to remind him and for him, he wasn't ready to let go. So finally at that point in the movie, I think he had made it clear to the audience that he is ready to let go. But when he tried to let go, there's some things that you can never really let go of, like that grief and that
Mm,
sadness is always going to stick with you, and that's
yeah.
why I think the ball came back. So I just and that's one of the things that the movie does is it showcases that brilliantly in that scene, because that scene meant it spoke a lot to me, because I could completely get that from watching it this time. Like, wow, that's powerful. That really is. And the
Wow.
fact that it's a ball too, that any child would play with. I mean, any child would play with a ball. And the fact that this house is haunted by the ghost of Joseph, it makes sense that that ball would come back down. Which that is some of the most, just it gives you goosebumps every time you have any scene in this movie shot around that staircase. I get goosebumps every time something happens.
Mhm.
There's one scene in particular that every time I watch this movie, it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and it throws me off. It's like, oh my god, that's fucking creepy. But I mean, it's got a lot to do with that staircase, dude.
Mm.
Well, to your point, Tony, as far as that ball, I think that was the turning point in the film where, because we talked about it earlier, where in the back of his mind, he's like, he knows that this house has got some activity, but
Mhm.
it's almost like he doesn't want to cope with it. You know, it almost seems that way, or maybe he's just in disbelief of it. At first, and I think
I'm-
that ball is like, okay, this is the turning point. Now something is happening.
yeah,
You know.
because even there's in a film like this, you have to have your seance scene. There's got to be a seance scene in these
Yeah.
films. So,
Oh yeah.
of course, we have a seance scene, which this seance scene is brilliant. I love it, dude.
Hmm.
It's moody, it's atmospheric. The way it's played out, it's really fantastic. And then when you find out what the recording, like when they do the recording and they hear the voices back, oh man, it's very effective. But even then, he almost feels like when he's sitting down at that table and the medium's there and the lady that runs the historical society or his agent is there, and then her husband. I mean, it feels like when he looks at the medium, he seems still very skeptical. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't believe it, because he gives them that look that you know most skeptics would give somebody that is really into the paranormal. Um, but then when it plays out and then he plays back the recording and he sees what the medium is, because she's basically just writing crazy on these pieces of paper. And then every
Hmm.
once in a while, when a question is asked, they'll write something very coherent on that paper, like a name or what they're doing there or something like that.
Yeah.
But when that scene is over and they play back the tapes, you can clearly hear the voice of the apparition that is there, that
Yeah.
our ghost is trying to communicate and answer the questions. So, man, that was
That
man, that
that was a
scene.
cool scene
Was this so? It was so good.
because he kept rewinding it to hear it, like as if like he's like, no way, just heard that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He
we
kept,
see
he
that a
kept, he
lot
kept,
too.
he kept like he almost was like enhancing it to where he could hear it better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Almost like he couldn't hear it at first, and maybe even still in disbelief of it a little
Yeah.
bit.
Because those last couple times, it was coming through clear as day.
Hmm.
There was no mistaking it.
Which, which I don't know if you know this, Tony, but there are mediums out there that to communicate, they actually do communicate by drawing on paper like that. And it's almost like the ghost or the spirit channels the hand or whatever to write certain words and stuff.
Right.
I don't think I have ever personally seen that. Like I've seen him use tarot cards and I've seen him use, just speak.
Mhm.
But I thought it was kind of interesting.
It was really neat them using the basically they were kind of honing in on EVP, which electronic voice phenomenon. People have
Mhm.
never heard of that, especially back in the early '80s, like that. So that was kind
Hmm.
of a new technology almost back in the day. So that was really neat that they were using that in that film.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to ask you fellas, I noticed this too when I was watching it. There's a scene when our lead character John, he goes through, he finds the walled off room, and he goes through the room and he sees it's completely filled with cobwebs. It looks all dilapidated. It's really, really, like I said, the set design in this movie is brilliant. But he's going through this room and he finds a music box, and he opens up the music box and it plays a tune, and it really resonates with him because he played the same song when he
Yeah.
first got to the house. So that made me think, well, this is the big thing for me. Did Joseph kind of like, you know, go through him on a subconscious level of some type to play that song through him, or how did that like? I was really curious about how that worked.
That's actually answered in the film.
Is it
Yes.
really? Did I miss that? Okay.
Yes, because there's a scene where he's trying to explain. So he presents all his evidence thus far before the medium's been there, and
Hmm.
he presents all the evidence to the historical society woman that got him into the house. Um, yeah, so he explained it to her. He was like, how do you explain this? This was before he took her up to that room. He was like that this music box. He goes, listen to that. He goes, I've never played that before I got into this house.
He's never even
And
heard of it before he got in
yeah,
there.
he's never even heard of it. He said I started playing this song when I got into this house. And it was a song that was like from 50 years back or whatever.
Mhm.
And he was like, so explain that. So that was kind of explain that either the house or um Joseph essentially made him play that.
That's what I was curious about. I was wondering if it was Joseph, because who knows? Joseph could have been. He could have played the piano. We don't really know. So, could he have, you know, used him as a surrogate to do that, or was it just the house like adding effect to him? I don't know. That's one of those answers that I probably wouldn't get, but I really think about that. Like, wow, what could have caused him to play that without him actually hearing the song in the first place? Really,
Mhm.
Right.
really, really, really thought provoking stuff.
Probably just one of those added effects for, um, just for the sake of it. I don't think they ever had.
Something.
Yeah, I don't think they ever had intentions on explaining it. I think it was just something they added to be like, to add to the creep factor.
Yeah, well, it definitely worked because that was pretty.
Mhm.
That was pretty
Yeah,
good.
I thought it was pretty cool too.
Hmm.
Um, and that music box is showcased a couple times, even at the end of the movie,
Mhm.
Yeah,
which I thought was kind of cool.
Which when we get into that, I've got a serious question to ask you guys about that.
yeah, I do too. I got something I want to bring up on that too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, so at this point, he is now trying to investigate and everything, and you're kind of following along this murder mystery because yes, at this point he's listened to the tape and to the point where the tape almost like channeled him into where he saw this murder take place, you know.
Hmm.
And so he starts digging and doing his research. And here's the thing, okay? So basically, all the history has been wiped away from this house since before the 1920s, you
Yeah.
know? So he really has to dig hard, and he starts finding stuff. Um, it almost seems like it's been covered up
Hmm.
by by the who is it? The senator?
Senator Carmichael. Yep.
Yeah, Senator Carmichael, who is Joseph Carmichael, as we know.
As we know.
Um, yeah. But yeah, so and basically the plot is that there was a large sum of money, or explain that a little bit better because I was kind of lost there for a minute. But the large sum of money was inherited by Joseph.
Well, so from what I understand, and hear me out on this, fellas, because this is kind of long winded. Um, so yeah, so what I understand is that this man, the father, which was it Michael Carmichael? Is it something like that?
That sounds redundant.
That does sound redundant. I know. The father of Joseph was married to the daughter of a very, very rich man, and they had a child, and this child was born sickly and inoperable. I don't know exactly what the disease was, but he wasn't able to fully function and use his legs. He was very sickly and very skinny. And from what I understand, just piecing through it together with the movie, is that the wife died, so the inheritance was left to her son through the man's father-in-law. But the son had to reach a certain age in order to get that inheritance. So the father didn't believe that his son was going to make it to that age because he was so sickly. So he secretly killed his son in a very, very horrific way, and then used the guise of the war that was going on at the time to send a doppelganger, or a changeling as they call it, somebody that they or an orphan that they picked out of an orphanage, and took him and sent him away to Switzerland to get, as far as everybody was aware of, worked on so he could get better. And then when he finally was able to come back after the war, he was able to get that inheritance so that the father could actually still inherit that money and live off that money through his son. If that makes any sense to our listeners out there. I know it was long-winded, but that's what I got from it.
That's what we call the old switcheroo.
Yeah, basically that's what we learned that the changeling is basically an orphan that is sent in to replace the surrogate or the original son, in order for that family to gain the inheritance. Because if it wasn't the son that would gain that inheritance, it was going to go to a I think it was not a I don't know, the state, I think, would get that money.
Yeah, I think it was if the child died before the age,
Yeah,
all the money would have went to some organization for the state or something like that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he wouldn't see a bit of that money. So in order for him, he saw the money, he was greedy. So I mean, sadly and really, really tragically, he would kill his own son in order to get all that money, and then have an orphan take the place of his son in order to inherit that money, but have to send him off to Switzerland so it would seem like he got better and he was healed because he was so sickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's
it's I'm sure he didn't want a son who couldn't, grew up disabled and be ashamed of that, and that's one thing that it kind of reminded me of a movie I watched a while back called The Disappointments Room with Kate Beckinsale, where it was essentially that. It was it was an okay film, but it was essentially, she found out that this little girl had been locked away in this room, in a secret room in the attic that was completely hidden, because she had a deformity, and the man, just couldn't live with the fact that he had a daughter who was deformed, and he mistreated her, and eventually he killed her, and so the house was haunted as a result. And so when the scene where he found the room in the attic with the wheelchair and all, I was like, oh, this reminds me a lot of that movie. So, and then the plot, of course, when it started unrolling, I was like, oh, I got you. Okay, it is very similar, but very different.
In a sense, yeah. But and then we find out the banging coming from is when he was drowning the young boy. He was actually banging on the side of the bathtub that he was in, and that's where that reoccurring sound is coming from.
Residual energy is what they call it.
Yeah, residual energy.
Maybe watch too much Ghost Adventures.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts though, as far as so Senator Joseph? What are your thoughts as far as do you think he was aware that all this happened or no?
I think he was, because at the time he was at a right age to know what was going on. He might not have known exactly how much, like, he probably wasn't sure that his father was, you know, the man behind it, or was, you know, killing or killed that young boy, but he had to have known that something was going on. He had to have known that that wasn't his biological father.
Hmm.
Right.
He was at that age. I think he was at the right age, because they he purposely tried to get an orphan that was around the same age as his son. I think his son was had to been 6 or 7 years old at that time.
Hmm.
So he had to have known something. He might have, like, over the years, because it's been a long time. He might have over the years just completely blocked it out and didn't want to believe it, and was so, like,
Yeah.
completely against ever, you know, because no one had brought it up to him before. And so I mean, at the time when this movie takes place, he's an older gentleman, very, very old.
Yeah.
So, you know, he had lived his whole life as this personality, or this persona, that he portrayed to everybody. And even still, people were like, you know, when John was wanting to bring this up, people were like, oh, you can't, you know, he's a pillar of the community. He served this community for 30, 40 years or something like that. And he's always
Yeah.
been, you know, a pillar of this community and stuff like that. So he had a huge reputation, even around the city. So, you know, it's one of those things where I believe that he knew, but he didn't want to believe it. He just kind of blocked it off, kind of, you know, just completely, you know, just dove into the persona of this you know, this person that that he, so, you know, he is the doppelganger of. That's not doppelganger. That doesn't make any sense. But he, you know, the changeling. He is the
Yeah.
changeling. So he just accepted that role and just rolled with it throughout his life. And that's at that point, that's all he knew. He didn't know who he originally was.
Yeah.
Well, I have kind of mixed feelings on it because you know, at one point, you know, all the records, they have disappeared, right?
Yeah.
And you know, he's got somebody from the historic society contacting him, that old lady from the historic society, and they're like, she contacted him. She's like, you know, so and so, and then John is you know, kind of snooping around a little bit, trying to get some information on the house, you know, prior to, you know, the 1920s. And so, you know, he already was aware they were kind of investigating it, but it almost seemed like it didn't really bother him, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Let them investigate. But then, you know, when he confronted him at the airport, you know, he instantly contacted like the chief of police to go and talk to John and find out what his motive was on, you know, causing the big scene at the airstrip. And
right.
then later on, in the film, you know, John confronts him again at like his apartment or his home or whatever. And you know, that's when John basically starts, you know, bad mouthing the father. And he's like, you know, he's like supporting his father. He's like, he was a good man and everything.
Yeah.
So,
And he
you know,
started
Yeah.
how
breaking
can you
down.
sit there and slander him and call him a murderer? And it
Right.
almost seemed like he was very confused by it, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, he seemed genuinely emotional about it. Like, don't, like, he loved his father. He didn't want anyone to slander his father's name. And then he took it very offended. He was offended by the sheer notion that his father could be a killer or be a
I think
murderer.
I think he knew about it. I just think he was in denial that his father
Exactly. That's
was
exactly
a
right.
murderer. He didn't want to believe that his father was a murderer, which is why when it was brought up, he was very defensive about it and like almost shaking, angry, and upset.
Right.
And then, you know, and then there's a scene later where he actually, or a little later, actually, this is right after, where he's got the medals, you know,
That's
and he's comparing the medals, and he takes the one medal and he throws it down because he's like, you know, this is bullshit kind of deal, and then it like that's when he gets contacted by that spirit, and he's having that crazy trippy vision.
yeah. I was just about to say he beat me to it. That metal. I think the metal had a lot to do with it. When he
Yeah,
brought that metal, that I don't think he ever thought that anyone would find, but because this is a paranormal film, he was able to find stuff out even without digging through records, and even with that no one would ever have found out had it not been for Joseph trying to reach him and contact him and send him on this path.
hmm
Because I don't believe that he thought that that was even a possibility that anyone would ever find the original grave of where this young boy was buried. Like, no one would know that. I mean, this case is so old.
Yeah.
Nobody else has that information. His father was the only one that knew where the body was originally buried. Um, he never in a million years thought that all this would be dumped on him. So he was kind of like shocked almost that like he found all this out.
Yeah.
He was able to uncover all this information.
Yeah.
I will say this though. Joseph was a little asshole.
Yeah.
He was-
I
Like
mean, I
he
get,
was not a friendly ghost.
no,
well, I get it because, a ghost, they can only, try so hard. And, I've heard that, if they want to try and get a point across and you don't understand it, they can get agitated or, a kind of aggressive. It almost seems aggressive because they're agitated, but
Yeah.
they're just agitated because they can't get their point across.
Hmm.
So when he's like, I'm at a loss, all the doors start slamming in the house and everything, it's just him basically getting aggravated. But the ending is what kind of confused me whenever he goes back into the house and everything's shaking frantically and everything.
She
You know,
gets
and
chased by a wheelchair.
yeah.
no,
Yeah, I
she
was
got chased by the wheelchair, which I thought was strange. Like she didn't have anything to do with anything, and she was getting chased around the house with the wheelchair.
She
Oh,
goes, she goes, I don't want to go up there. I'm like, I'm
and
with
she
you,
had nothing to
sister.
do. And I agree with you guys. I agree with you. The thing that sets it over the edge for me is we're led to believe that this young boy Joseph killed a police officer. He murdered a police officer.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like that is what seals it for me. Is that this guy, the police officer that Senator Carmichael sent over to talk to John to see if he was trying to blackmail him into getting, that information across to get some money. The police officer talked to him. He's like, "Listen, I know you have, or I've heard you have a medal that belongs to the senator." He said, "If you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to come back with a search warrant. We're going to tear this house apart, and we're going to find that medal." He's like, "Well, you can try." He's like, "I'll be here," and then he left. And then, as soon as that happened, this guy gets into a car accident with no cars around him. The car just flips over in the middle
Yeah.
of the road, and the
Joseph.
guy's dead. He killed a police officer.
And
Yeah.
that's where like when I was saying how you have like the over the top paranormal instances in this movie where like he's not he simultaneously somehow attached himself to a medal halfway across town and a house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he attaches himself to a police officer, causing him to wreck. Like this is a powerful entity.
I
Yeah,
think
he
I think he
yeah.
just wants to mainly get his point across,
Well,
you
he's
know.
Well,
I mean
he
But
it worked.
succeeded. He
but
did.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like like obviously so basically he's trying to help John follow this murder mystery and try and get it figured out,
Yeah, because
you know.
he wants his body to be, or his soul and spirit to be at peace, and he can't be at
Yeah.
peace if he's not, his body's not found and this mystery is not resolved.
Yeah. And so with that being said, the police officer was going to get in the way essentially.
So he killed him.
I mean, that's the only logical thing that I can think of at
I
this
mean,
point.
I'm
But
just doing my job.
there again, I mean,
Protect and serve.
he got so pissed. He got so pissed at John at one point that he shattered a mirror and lodged a piece of glass into John's neck.
in his neck, yeah, and that's right around the same time the police officer died. So it was like it's like the
Yeah,
two
well, he envisioned, like, John saw the police officer die.
exactly, and that, yeah. Which I thought
Mm.
when Daniel said, "Oh, he can be a little asshole," I was like, "Well, he did kill a guy."
Mhm.
So I mean,
Yeah, it's like, hey, because most movies, it's like, I died in this house. I need rest. This guy's like, yeah, I died. But I'm gonna fuck everything up.
yeah, I mean, he could
I'm
have.
gonna, I'm gonna chase you in my wheelchair, bitch.
Yeah. But he does. He throws tantrums throughout the movie.
Yeah.
He
I mean,
definitely
and
does. And it
that's
makes
what a
right.
child would do.
Exactly. It makes sense. This was a young child we're talking about. We're not talking about a a young man or a man. We're talking about a young boy. So it makes total sense that he would be, especially when things aren't going the way he wants them to go, that he would be lashing out and reacting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was crazy that he just straight up murdered somebody.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't. When I first saw the movie, I didn't see that coming. I was like, "Wow, this guy died." I can't believe that.
A lot of paranormal investigators may say it's a violent spirit due to the violent energy that was in the house.
Well, and then the violent, like tragic way that he died too has got a lot to do with it. I mean, that's
Again,
yeah.
there goes that residual effect that Daniel was talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's tragic the way this young child died. I mean, it's awful to get killed by your father, drowned in a bathtub where you can't
Mhm.
can't do anything. It's awful, man.
Hanging your little bare ass upside down.
Yeah, dude, it's fucking tragic, man. But I
Mhm.
remember, going back to a scene that just fucking when I first saw it, it made all my hairs like stand on end. It's when he's showing her the tapes of, Joseph communicating,
Mhm.
and she's so like sad about the events and stuff like that. So she walks through and then stops at the staircase and just looks in sheer terror up at the
Yeah,
staircase.
she's just
Like
in shock, right?
that scene gets me every time, dude. Oh
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
it
Her
does me so.
acting there was so good
It really was.
because it made you think she genuinely saw something,
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
what I thought
And
too.
then you're waiting in anticipation to see what it is. I really thought they were going to show Joseph, like maybe an apparition of him or something.
But they
But
did.
even though it
Or
was
even just
just
a shadow figure, but I think it was
yeah,
more effective of that wheelchair just sitting there.
Yeah. It
yeah,
was.
because you got to give him something. You got to give him something solid.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why most ghost movies you see they don't usually just show a shadow figure. It's like you'll see like a full blown human standing there.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people when they give testimonies of what they saw. It's that like I saw a man walking down the street where he was wearing overalls and a cowboy hat. I saw it, but then like when
Well, I
they
hate,
actually catch ghost on film, it's usually like a mist or shadow.
well, I hate to say it too, but if this movie was made in like the early 2000s, or they would have showed it. Like you just know it. But
Oh yeah,
because the movie was
Yeah.
made when it was made, less is more, and it's effectively more creepy this way than it would be if you just show some CGI ghost or something like that.
yeah.
It's so much more effective. It's so much more
I
effective.
really think it'd be cool. One thing this movie was missing is they had a scene where you could see feet prints, like wet feet prints. How cool would that have been?
That would
Yeah, I
have
was
been
thinking about
interesting.
that. Yeah, I was thinking about that too
Yeah,
when I saw that. Yeah, I was like, why? I'm kind of surprised. Well, I'm kind of glad, but it's something where it's at the bottom of the steps where his room is, where all the dust and stuff is. Like you could see like the indentions of feet or something
yeah.
like that.
Mm.
But then I thought about it, I was like, if this kid was in a wheelchair, he was immobile. Why the hell would you have him upstairs?
That's just doubling down on the assholery.
I know,
Yeah.
man. It's like really you got
Well,
him up.
it goes back to being ashamed of a sickly child,
Yeah,
Yeah,
keeping them locked up away from the world.
but
I mean, this
locked up
is this was a
upstairs.
very elegant and wealthy man. And back in those days, that was almost kind of, oh, I hate to say, but frowned upon essentially.
Well, it was pride
You hear
too. Mhm.
cases of like sanitariums and stuff that held, a lot of people would just dump their, you know, autistic children and stuff in, back in those days,
Yeah, because they didn't know how to deal. They didn't know what. Yeah, it was so primitive back then. They didn't know how to deal with it, or they just didn't know. And it was almost like a pride thing too. Like I said, it's like, oh, this man of society, this man of wealth, and this man of very, prim and proper. He can't have a sickly son. Like that looks bad on him.
right.
exactly.
And the fact that this guy married into wealth, like his wife was the one that had the wealthy family. Like
Yeah,
in order to get that inheritance, he had to have his heir, which was his son, survive. So he wouldn't have gotten anything if Joseph died and he didn't have like a somebody to take his place, to kind of show off that, hey, I still have a son, so I still am entitled to this money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just tragic, man. The whole story is
Yeah.
tragic.
I really feel like too that George C. Scott's character had a emotional tie too because he had lost a daughter. So when he
Exactly.
found out that it was a child involved, like he was willing to stop at nothing to, because he was in disbelief as to how a father could do this to his son.
Exactly. Because I mean, you could tell by just the short time that he was a great father, absolutely fantastic father.
Yeah.
Like he loved his daughter, he loved his family. He was a family man. You could just tell from just the opening scene, there was just so
Mm,
much there. Even
Yeah.
it didn't take 30 minutes to build up that family chemistry, or it didn't have flashbacks to where he was, doing things with his kid and doing things with his wife. No, it built it up in like the first 5 minutes. That's all it had. That's all it took for you to really understand how much of a loving father he was, which is, I mean, I just credit where credit's due to the filmmakers. I mean, that's the way to do it.
it gave you that much, and within the first, like I said, like you said, within the first opening scene, just instantly you felt so much sorrow for his loss in that moment. It's almost like you're with him in that moment.
Yeah,
You know, so,
vicariously, yeah.
yeah.
Which is why it's so effective. And I go back to that scene where he's, in the bed and he's just sobbing and crying, because that's the only
Mhm.
time you really see that. That's why it's effective, because it's the only time you really see it.
Hmm.
It's the
Yeah.
only time you really see him break down. Because you got to think, and this is another thing I didn't bring up, but he was willing to go back to work only a couple months after his wife and daughter got killed. I mean, that's a very short amount of time. I mean, that he just
You could
wanted to go,
tell
and
he
I guess,
was he was.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you could just. I thought you were going to say you could just tell he just wanted to get back on track, just so he'll kind of, you know, keep his mind focused on and not dwell on it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It almost seemed like he was just trying to basically put it behind him and move on with his life, and I think that's why he moved out of his apartment,
And
and everything, just to kind of get away and almost like lose the memories, in a sense. And I think that's that's why it's so effective when he goes back to, he was talking to um the woman from the historic society, where he's like, I can't do this. I just lost my daughter and my wife. I can't go through this again.
mm,
But ultimately you can tell he's got a big heart and he just wants to help.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. He genuinely wants to solve this, and he wants to help this young boy. And it it's almost like a duty to him at that point.
Hmm. So
He,
here's one of my questions. So in the basically in pretty much at the end here, where obviously he's approached the senator and everything, and the senator, I guess, is finally coming to terms with reality of what exactly occurred, and everything, and he's almost got the envision, or he's got the vision of the senator walking up the steps and everything, and the house is on fire, and he's does it seem like he's almost trying, like the ghost is so angry that he's just taking it out on John, or John just happens to be there at the wrong moment? But it almost seems like he's killing, or wants to kill John, because he makes him fall from the second story, and then essentially the chandelier comes collapsing where John's laying.
Mhm.
So it almost, I don't know, what's y'all's thoughts on that?
And it is tough, because you could kind of just feel like maybe the rage had taken over at that point. And he just was not thinking clearly. Well,
Mm.
that he just wasn't, in the right state, and he was just lashing out. He had, because I mean, it built up to where he would lash out so many more times. Because even there's a scene when John comes back, and it's the scene that you were talking about when all the doors are slamming, and
Mhm.
John just breaks down. He's like, what more can I do? What more do you want me to do? He's like, I've done everything. He's like, well, I can't do anything else. And the doors are slamming, and you could just tell he's just pissed. And I think at that point, you know, because John had tried to make amends and try to talk to the senator and try to tell him, hey, you know, I have all this information. I don't know if you know this, but you're just not the biological son of this man, and that you are essentially a surrogate and you're just a changeling. And
Mhm.
that's just what you are, and that your father did this and it was a tragic thing. And I just don't know if the senator had felt any guilt by this. I mean, you could see that he did, but he was almost conflicted in a way. Like maybe he felt guilt because, you know, he was prideful and he didn't want this information getting out there, or maybe he genuinely felt sorry for this young man that died and he took his place. Like it could be either or. You just don't know. Um,
Yeah.
and then when he drops that medal down, I think that's what did it, to where he looked at it and he had a medal already on him and he pulled it out and he kind of just threw it down and he grabbed the real one and he set it on the picture of his father. And that's when the vision started happening. That's when he started kind of getting sucked into this, you know,
Mm.
this situation where he was walking through the house and the house was burning and falling apart.
So
Well,
what
you
do
know,
we? Go
well,
ahead.
in that same sense, you know, maybe to clarify what's going on there is, you know, again, you know, this is a young child who's essentially getting, what would you say, retribution
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. You know, he's finally getting, you know, the release that he's wanting, or you know, and so maybe, you know, he's reacting, you know, like you know, more powerful than what he normally would
Yeah.
in that sense. So, you know, I could see that, you know, and just John just happens to be there, you know, in the wrong place at the wrong time,
Yeah, I think he was. I think a
essentially.
lot of he was just the wrong place at the wrong time. Like because I think that medal was his way, Joseph's way of finally reaching to the senator. That medal being placed on his desk was Joseph's way of actually finally getting close to this man that he had been, you know, wronged, and this man was the reason, or the you know the symbol of his undoing and his
Yeah.
tragedy. And this man was the symbol of that. And finally he had a piece of him that was near or close to this man. So now he was able to reach out and get his revenge essentially.
Mm.
He
Hmm.
was finally able to because you knew that house was coming down at the end. You knew it was gonna be a fiery, you know, destruction, and it was very
Hmm.
poetic.
Yeah. What do you think about when John saw that, like basically the embodiment of the senator walking up the stairs?
That's what I think is interesting. Are we as the audience just led to believe that we see that, or is he seeing that too? I don't know. Maybe he's just seeing the house burning and falling apart. But
Well,
maybe we,
Well,
I
he
think the
looked. There was a scene where he looked and saw him walking up the stairs.
or he
Mhm.
could just be looking and seeing the house and just the flames and stuff like that. I don't know. Like I'm kind of curious because how could he see the senator there if the senator's not there in the first place?
Right.
That's what.
I think the senator was there almost kind of like an out of body experience. I think the senator was honestly there, uh, almost in spirit, not in body, you know?
Or
Right.
what if what he was seeing was the spirit of the senator? The senator had already died,
That could be it too.
and the
That could
senator,
very well be
yeah,
it.
and the
Hmm.
senator was like walking up there to, you know, become attached to that house, you know, or
Right, because it's been clearly established that he's seen the spirit of Joseph. Like he saw him in the tub. He's
Mhm.
envisioned him before. So he's able to do that. So it could very well be that the senator had already died and that he was seeing his spirit kind of, you know, going into, you know, this fiery conclusion of, you know, this poetic ending that
Hmm.
was almost like fate in a way, that
Yeah.
this is how fate was destined for this to happen.
Hmm.
Because it's I mean it's very much implied that the senator, you know, He wasn't there actually. He died from having, I guess it was a heart attack or something in his office, because they pull up, John's there at his office again, and he sees the ambulance getting the senator. They're loading up the body. So, that's not actually his physical being in that house. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating, man. The ending's more fascinating than I think people probably realize.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot.
A lot of symbolism in this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Like just the way you broke down the ball scene really got me thinking. Like, man, I kind of overlooked that.
Yeah.
You know?
It's made so much sense to me that time.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
his way of like saying, "Hey, I finally let go of this grief, and I'm finally ready to move
Yeah.
on." But in a way, you can never really move on. It's always going to stick with you. So that's why the ball came back.
Mm. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, in conclusion, John gets out. The house burns down,
Mm-hmm.
and then they drive to the senator's house where the ambulances are there taking out the senator's dead body, where he had died of an alleged heart attack.
Heart attack. Yeah.
Then, right before the credit roll, we see the music box on the ground next to the burnt uh, wheelchair,
Yep.
and the music box starts playing.
Yeah. Pops open and starts playing.
So this is the question that I wanted to ask you guys. So all this took place, right? So that Joseph could finally, I guess, get his peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that he could actually rest. He can move on, So in the end, the music box opens, starts playing again. Did he get his peace, or is he still there?
He's an asshole. He's like, I'm not done. That was a riot. There was
Yeah.
fire. There was fire. A chandelier fell. I killed a guy.
I killed a guy.
Killed 2 people.
Chased the lady with my wheelchair. I played catch with John.
Let's not forget the water shenanigans.
I ran his water bill up.
Yeah.
He's not done. He's gonna go haunt the world now.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know, man. I think with everything that happened and stuff like that, there'd be nothing else for him to really want. His body or his soul would just be at peace at that point.
Well, his body was found,
Exactly. His body.
and the truth is now out there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not public, because in the end, really just the woman from the Historic Society and John, no, unless they go public with it.
Right. Which I
the
doubt.
story. Yeah, the
John-
story really doesn't tell that.
Yeah, he had plenty of chances to tell the story, and no, he just didn't take it. He just wanted to do right. He wanted to do the right thing.
yeah.
He didn't care about publicity or, like I said, getting money from the senator, because the senator tried to pay him off in the last scene. He's like, "Hey, how much do you want?" He's like, "I'll give you money." He's like, "I don't want that." He keeps saying, "I don't want money. I'm not in it for blackmail. I'm just in it for the right reasons."
I really feel like he was doing it too to get his mind off of his, the incident with his family.
With his family, yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Because once the movie really starts picking up, they don't really go back to that, and that really, it goes back to that metaphor that you shared, where he let go.
Yeah.
And after that scene, you don't really see, he don't really talk about it much, he don't, or he doesn't. It's not brought up again.
Well, that scene alone, to me, that scene alone makes this movie brilliant to me.
Yeah.
It's like you said, once he lets go of that ball, and that ball kind of comes back, you don't really see a lot of he doesn't have visions of his family. He doesn't think about them. It just doesn't show back up. From that point on, it's all about solving mystery and helping Joseph find peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, let's do some trivia, and then we can land the plane. Is that cool with you guys?
Yeah.
Cool. So we've already discussed some things. Like it wasn't really a house. It was just a really brilliant set piece in a studio. Was based on an alleged true story by one of the writers. So director Martin Scorsese included this movie in his top 11 scariest horror films of all time.
Yeah,
So
Scorsese
that
loves
was kind of
film.
cool. I can see that because, I mean, like I said, this film is just brilliantly shot. And if there's anyone who has an eye for good cinema, it's Martin Scorsese.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was shot in Canada, boys.
It is a Canadian film.
It is a Canadian
You
film.
know what? You know what? I kind of wondered that because the ambulance looked different than most ambulances you would see in America.
It said, "Hey." Bad joke. Sorry.
Well, from what I understand, it was shot in Vancouver and Victoria.
Yeah. It actually won some. So it won the first film to win Best Picture in Canadian Film Awards after its name was changed to the Genie Awards. Film was nominated for 10 Genies and won 8 of the 10. So that's pretty awesome. Screenwriters Diana Maddox and William Gray spent around 6 months doing research for the picture, which included copious newspaper articles on parapsychological encounters and over 700 books and almost 2,000 case stories or case histories. So yeah, a lot of paranormal studies for this movie, and it paid off because you see a lot of the things that are shared in paranormal experiences in this movie, like we mentioned before. Except for killing police officers randomly. That's a new one. um, in a featurette for the DVD release of the 1996 horror film Scream, actress Neve Campbell named The Changeling as the scariest film she had seen. So, thought that was kind of cool. This was the first on-screen appearance of actor Joshua Jackson when he was several months old. I don't remember a baby in this movie. Do you?
I don't recall seeing a baby.
Unless he was like a background prop or something, or an extra. So Joshua Jackson, if you remember, went on to play in. I think he played in Dawson's Creek, but more notably, he played in The Mighty Ducks, which I just recently rewatched, and it was actually a really good movie.
Yeah.
Except for Emilio Estevez being a cook to the kids when he first met them.
Yeah, dude, he was a dick.
Whatever, you're fat. You suck at hockey.
He was a dick to those kids, man.
You're losers. Are you even? Are you orphans? I don't think he said that, but yeah, he was a dick. Those kids. Emilio! Mighty Ducks, man. I swear to God. So director Peter Medak, Medak, had some pretty notable directing jobs for like TV roles and such. But one of his more notable films, other than this one, was Species 2.
Yeah,
it's the movie where they have sex with humans.
I believe he also he didn't he direct the Twilight series as well. I believe, or I'm wanting to say I think he directed like some episodes in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
He might have. He directed an episode of Breaking Bad.
Nice.
Oh wow.
He directed an episode of Hannibal. He directed an episode of House. He's credited as a director. So, because TV is funny because, like, even like The Office, they didn't just have like one writer. That's what made that show so special too. Is you had a lot of the actors actually directing some of the episodes. like Kelly Kapoor, the lady who plays Kelly Kapoor, actually directed a lot of episodes on The Office. Fun fact.
Nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did a bunch of stuff. He did an episode of Magnum PI.
Wow.
Yeah, just fun little fact about the director. That is cool.
Well, one funny thing about the director is this movie got him a gig with Mick Garris when Mick Garris did the Masters of Horror. Like it got him to direct one of the Masters of Horror episodes. Because
Awesome.
Mick Garris is a very big fan of this film, which when I was watching my Severn Blu-ray, the gorgeous Severn Blu-ray that came out, it had special features, and I was looking at the special features, and I saw the one where Mick Garris talked about the film, and he said this movie was so great and so magnificent to him that he reached out to the director to be on his Masters of Horror because of this film. Like he had not really done a lot of horror films up until that point, but because of this film alone, he reached out to him. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. The wheelchair sequence was apparently filmed in Seattle, Washington. That's interesting.
Yeah, they did shoot some. They did shoot some scenes also in New York. You know, especially in the beginning when he's moving, because he originally is living in New York City, and then he moves to Seattle. So they did shoot a couple shots in New York. So it wasn't completely filmed in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually says here the opening scene is shot in New York. That's pretty cool. Apparently there's a reboot of the film that has been in development since July 2020.
Oh man,
Wow.
I don't know.
Oh man.
They got to remake everything.
They gotta remake everything. I swear to God, if I'm lying, I'm dying. If they try to bring Back to the Future back and remake and reboot it, I'm a riot.
They're going to.
I heard they were going to make a fourth one, wasn't it? At one point in time, it was in the works.
But I think either way, it's gonna be bad. Like if you try to bring all the characters back and do some shit where like they're trying to go back and go to the future and find a serum where they don't die or something, I don't know. or Einstein dies and they had to go back and bring him back, or something stupid. Like I'd be upset. I'd also be upset if they would bring the movie back and have completely different actors play, like same concept but different actors. Like, come on, man. I was watching the new Jumanji movie last night on TV, and you know they had an interesting concept. Like it had some decent comedy. You know, I didn't finish watching it. I just watched like the first maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. And but the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, man, there's something about the original, you know, that makes it so good.
Well, that's what I think a lot of remakes do. A lot of remakes do best is make the originals look so much better.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, there's some great remakes out there. But the majority make the original film look so much better in comparison. So there's that.
Yeah. So here's something interesting. In the scene which the ball drops down the stairs with Claire freezing in fright, just prior, she and John have a spat in which she shouts, "Stop it, George." Character name John, actor name George.
Yeah, she didn't say. She said her husband's name instead of the actor's name, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, I didn't catch on to that.
I didn't either until I read that. I was like, "Oh wow!"
Is that in the movie?
Yeah,
they kept it in there.
It's got to be.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that now
because that's one of my favorite scenes. I love that scene because it really just gives me goosebumps every time I see it.
Because that's where she freezes and sees the wheelchair.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that now. That's interesting.
And I wonder. I mean, because I know when you're doing a lower budgeted film, you only have so many takes. You can't always, run with like 20 takes on a scene. So sometimes you got to use the first couple.
I'm honestly surprised. Maybe they just didn't catch on to that.
Well, I didn't. If it is in there, I never caught on to it.
I'm wondering if they did, because they could have easily edited it out and then dubbed her voice over her saying John instead of George.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, man.
Yeah.
What's more interesting is it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and I didn't even catch on to that.
Unless it was like original take and they changed it, or I don't know. Here's one. Spanish filmmaker Alejandro Amenabar has claimed in several interviews that this is one of his all-time favorite horror movies, up to the point of inspiring several scenes of Thesis and the others. Remember we were talking about the piano scene?
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's just some interesting facts on the Changeling.
Right on. What about ratings, guys? What do you guys rate this?
Oh yeah, so I've downloaded my Letterboxd.
Hey.
And if you're listening, you can too. Just go to the app store, download Letterboxd. I think it's BOXD.
Yeah, D.
It's the one with the best ratings. Just download that, make an account, and follow us on there. And if you're feeling fancy, you can put your own reviews into these movies that we discuss. So pretty fun, pretty fun. Let's see. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
No.
My letterbox rating for this movie is a 5 out of 5. It's to me, it's a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest Canadian horror films ever made, and I love it. I love it every time every time I watch this movie, I get sucked into it, and I know what happens, and I still get sucked into it.
Mm.
So it's got lasting. And I thought about it this time too. Watching this film would and I didn't mention it when we talked about it, but it is a slower burn horror film. It's not fast paced. It takes a while to develop. It's
Yeah.
not one of those films that's very in your face, going, going, going. It's a slow burn. But even still, I think this movie would appeal to mainstream audiences because I do believe that they will get sucked into the mystery. And I think that they will follow the plot and really, really invest in it.
Yeah.
So I think this movie has mainstream appeal, even in today's audiences.
I actually thought of my parents when I watched this movie because they're big fans of Poltergeist. I almost said Poltergeist, and Amityville Horror. I think Amityville Horror is probably one of their favorite haunting movies.
Wow.
And I don't think they've ever seen this movie. So I'm gonna let my dad borrow this movie and let them watch it. I think they'll really enjoy it.
Oh man. Well, if they
That's awesome.
see it, I can't wait to hear what they thought about it.
Yeah, I think my dad's gonna especially like it too. So he's more into horror than my mom is, but my mom really likes haunting movies.
Your parents have good taste, man.
So I will say that I gave it a 4, but a very strong 4. I guess what prevented me from giving it 5 stars right off the bat was the fact that I did want to see more of the apparition in some way. Whether it be like a shadow or a mist or something. Granted, being 1980, could have been done, but it would have might not have looked so good. I don't know. I really, looking back, like I could easily give it a 5, but there was just some things missing. I guess more so I gave it a 4 because it was a slower burn, but it's a strong 4. Like 4 is a good rating.
Yeah, 4 is a good
Any way
rating.
you look at it. 3.5 stars is a good rating. But I will say that it is definitely worth the watch. I did put a little description in there when I rated it, but I tried to do so without giving too much away. That's always the hard thing unless you put the spoiler stamp on there. So, but yeah, 4 out of 5 stars.
That's a good rating.
When it comes to me, as far as the storyline and everything, so basically this film, I don't know if you guys caught on, but the runtime is actually relatively long.
That's a long movie.
It is a long movie, but in reality, I mean, with it being a long movie, a slow burn, usually those two things kind of turn a lot of people off when it comes to films. However, this one actually captivates you. You're in that mystery. You're trying to solve this mystery along with John, and it's a really good story. It's a really captivating story. So I gave it 5 as well. And
And
usually, and I'm part of that audience where, like, if I'm going to sit down to watch a film and I see that the runtime is really long, I'm like, shit, that's gonna take some investment, and
Directed by Zack Snyder.
but it's it was good for what it is. So
yeah,
yeah,
and that's
I gave it a solid 5.
that's another thing I forgot to bring up when we were talking about it is they almost subvert your expectations in the movie again by bringing up the fact that another child was killed at the house, that girl that was hit by the coal car. You
Mm,
think, oh, it's her. That's her haunting this. No, it's not. They throw you through a loop in this movie. Because
Mm.
even when I sat down and watched it, I'm like, that's right. They do that. They kind of they set you up for this, and then it's like, oh nope, they pull the rug out from under you. It's like, nope, that's not exactly what we were doing. That's not who we were setting up as the apparition or the ghost. I was like,
even John seems to think that in the movie.
yeah, he really
It was
like
explained that he thought that she was the one that was haunting the place.
exactly, and I thought
What
that was masterful.
what
Yes,
if that was the story being told as like a smoke and mirrors for the real tragedy that happened there as a cover up,
it could have been. It could
leading
have.
back to maybe the senator did know more than he was leading on.
They said a doctor lived there and that he had a child and she was run over by this coal car and that she succumbed to her injuries in the hospital. So,
By the way, the
but
house is haunted later.
yeah. But I mean, that could add to the lore of this house. Like, because there was a tragic event that happened in here, anyone that tries to live in this house is going to be met with tragedy as well, especially if they have
Mhm.
children. So that just adds the lore to me. That adds more to the lore of the house, and it just works for me even more.
Yeah.
I forgot to even mention that. That was oh man, that was great.
Good stuff. So now we land the plane.
Yep.
We land in the plane.
Let's do it.
All right. Corey, you want to take it away? You want me to?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
So, folks, you have been listening to the Midnight Monster Corner, and we appreciate you listening to our show. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and check us out on our Facebook group. We do greatly appreciate all the love that we're getting on our Facebook group, and we hope it continues. And we appreciate that. That's what keeps us going. Along with that, you can follow us on Twitter. Uh, what's the Twitter again, Daniel?
Twitter is monster_corner.
Yes. You can also follow Frosty on Instagram, which is the PG Frosty, correct?
Yes, the PG Frosty. I haven't been on. Well, I haven't been on there in a while. Well, I did post some of my hauls I got from this weekend. I did pick up some good stuff, which we could probably discuss maybe next episode.
Definitely. Yeah, I've got some stuff, and I also got one of your movies I picked up for you.
Yeah.
Guys, don't neglect Dollar Tree, by the way. There is a ton of horror films for $1 there and good stuff. I picked up Mind's Eye for Daniel
Hmm.
for $1.
I
Yeah.
still
It's
have to
awesome.
watch Rampant, which is a about this like Chinese army fighting off a swarm of zombies. Like, why would you not want to watch that?
Yeah. That's a good that's yeah. That's something you was like, oh, the premise is like, yeah, you gotta watch that. No question.
And along with that, you can also follow me on TikTok at Midnight Monster 20. I'm posting new stuff in there pretty much every week now. So go check that out. But guys, that's it. You guys got anything to add?
Think I'm good, brother.
Oh, I'm good, man. That was perfect.
All right. Well, later, guys.
Later, everybody.
Later.